I think it's time to get started, so welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Laura Bandy. I'm an instructor of English and Communication here on the Macomb campus, so I know most of you. And this is our first college theme presentation for the semester, and I'm going to be talking about Shakespeare. The title of my presentation is Shakespeare and You, Liberal Arts with the Bard, and full disclosure, I love Shakespeare, so that's where I'm coming from. A little bit of Shakespeare love. Just a reminder, we've got more college-themed goodness coming at you all semester. The next one is on the Macomb campus, February 4th, with Professor Angie Conklin, so you are encouraged to attend. And just a reminder of our college theme, when am I ever going to use this? Recognizing the value of a liberal arts education. So all of our themes, in some way, are centering on that notion. So, two main takeaways I'd like you to think about as I'm talking about Shakespeare today. One, I'm going to be talking about Shakespeare as the best entertainment, your best choice. And also I'm going to talk about the intersection of liberal arts and the Bard. As Shakespeare is known, quick vocabulary lesson for those of you who aren't familiar. Shakespeare is referred to as the Bard, and Bard literally means poet and teller of stories. William Shakespeare is the greatest storyteller of all time. That's not just my opinion. That's what all the people are saying. And thus he became known as the Bard. We think it dates back to David Garrick, the actor in 1769, who said, "For the bard of all bards was a Warwickshire bard," and that's where Shakespeare was from. So he's the guy, and he's the Bard. And I like to think of him as the Bard because it makes me feel like he's my friend. So, circling back around to that idea of Shakespeare as entertainment, I've got some reasons for that. Often we think of Shakespeare as the best writer, the best poet, his sonnets are amazing, best playwright, of course, the person we're forced to read in high school, and he is all of those things. But I want to talk about Shakespeare as an individual who is offering an awesome option for entertainment. Number one, Shakespeare's meant to be performed. He created plays, and plays are meant to be acted. So you're not just meant to read him on the page, although that's good too, and the language will take you over. But in terms of how he's really meant to be experienced, it's performance. Okay. Also, his plays were the entertainment of his time. That's the Elizabethan era, roughly 1550 to 1615, late 16th century or early 17th century. That was like movies, television, the YouTubes, the TikToks of today. People went to see Shakespeare. They paid whatever the currency was then, like 5 cents, and they went to see him performed. He was the main entertainment. And finally, I just want to point out, once again, and I'll keep saying this, he is, in my opinion, and lots of people's opinions, the greatest storyteller of all time. And our lives are experienced in stories. So if you're looking for good entertainment, don't you want to find the best storyteller? I always ask my students at the beginning of the semester what some of their favorite movies are, so I included some here. There were a lot of votes for Step Brothers. Some people are watching You on Netflix. So creepy. A lot of votes for Love and Basketball. That's a classic. Miles Morales in Into the Spider-Verse. These are some stories that we go to see, that we experience. But everything is a story. Literally Instagram. You make your stories if you're an Instagrammer. The music you listen to, the lyrics. Those are stories. The gossip that you whisper to each other. Those are stories. Those are super fun stories. My students told me about something I'd never heard of, which is a rap beef. When rappers have beefs. I'm fascinated by this. Apparently Cardi B and Nicki Minaj have a beef. That's a story. That's a great story. The story of how you met your boyfriend, your girlfriend. That's a meet cute. That's your story of how you met. The Super Bowlers are the 49ers and the Chiefs. I had to look that up. That's a great American story. That's happening. The first time in a long time, I guess, that both the uniforms are red or something. Family drama. That's a story we all experience. And of course, America, the story of us. Ever-changing, always evolving, and it really depends on who's telling that story. So, let me tell you a story. I want to talk about how I became like a big Shakespeare fan. I always kind of liked him, but I'm guessing a lot of you had the same experience I did in high school. It was like you're being forced to read his plays, usually Romeo and Juliet, and I think Julius Caesar, sometimes Antony and Cleopatra. And those are great. And they're fine. And then in college, I was an English major, and I was taking 3 different English classes. For some reason, those classes assigned King Lear which is considered by many to be his most challenging play. Certainly it's his most brutal. Has anybody read King Lear? Whoa, it's a rough ride. So I was assigned to read this in 3 different classes, and I did, and I was like, yay, less homework. And then in one day, all 3 classes, morning, noon, and night, I watched 3 different movie adaptations of King Lear. My professor at the time described it as a play that asks, what's the worst thing that could happen? And then answers it forever. So just a few images here before I tell you how that played out. One of the famous lines in Lear is, King Lear howls. And all the actors who have portrayed him have different ways of howling. So here's Lear howling, the great Don Warrington. Andrew Scott, for any Fleabag fans out there. That's the priest from Fleabag, all portraying Lear. So I had to watch 3 different versions of this incredibly punishing play, all in one day. This is an approximation of what happened. That's Will from Stranger Things and also me. So I watched it in the morning and I was like, oh, this is kind of sad, but it's cool. And then I watched a different version around noon in my afternoon class, and I was like, it's starting to get to me a little. A lot of people are dying. There's a lot of grief. There's some family stuff. Somebody went blind. Somebody's going insane. The daughters are all super mean. But I'm holding it together, and then the final class was an evening class. There were like 200 students in the class. I didn't know anybody. And they put on the Peter Brook version, which is a 1971 pretty famous version. And I just broke. Like I just, and I started just weeping openly. And then I sort of leaned my head on the shoulder of the stranger next to me and I said, make it stop. And she said, I can't. And so I just kept crying. And that's okay, I'll never see those people again. But point being, there's something about Shakespeare that is transformative. Just thinking about it, I'm thinking about it now and I'm sort of traumatized, but also like, wow, how does something make you feel that strongly? King Lear. A few images of some of the people who have played King Lear. We have Anthony Hopkins, otherwise known as Hannibal Lecter, and the great Emma Thompson, Emma Watson, and Florence Pugh, up-and-comer. Ian McKellen, Magneto, portrayed King Lear. Glinda Jackson, at 82 years old. Shakespeare knows no gender. Can cross all the genders, all the time periods. She played Lear. The great Don Warrington, the first black actor in the 2000s to portray King Lear. And then the Soviet version from the 70s, which is super terrifying. Include it, because you can tell from just looking at that, like stuff goes down, you know? So that's King Lear, and if you haven't read it, I really want to encourage you to read it. It's so magnificent and devastating. So I sobbed a lot that day, but it was true emotion and it was meaningful. And don't we want stories to move us? Emotion equals life. Meaning equals emotion and emotion equals life. Choose consciously and wisely. The stories you take in, they become a part of you, right? So you choose what you take in. I want to encourage you to seek out Shakespeare. So how does crying on strangers in public equal the Bard as best entertainment? Like I said, it really moved me. And Shakespeare has the ability to move everyone because we've got the comedy and tragedy theater mass for any theater nerds out there. You're probably familiar with those. Number one, his plays are endlessly adaptable to any time, any place, any circumstance. And you've probably already seen Shakespeare and maybe didn't even realize it. For example, 10 Things I Hate About You. Anybody seen 10 Things I Hate About You with Julia Stiles and the late great Heath Ledger? That is literally The Taming of the Shrew. That is Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew. You've got She's the Man with Amanda Bynes. That's Twelfth Night. That's Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, made into a film. Let's see, Othello. Period piece. Then you have O, with Mekhi Phifer, Josh Hartnett, and Julia Stiles in a high school, and all the jealousy and revenge of Othello played out on the basketball court. It's a great one. Get Over It with Kirsten Dunst, Cisco, and Ben Foster. That's Midsummer Night's Dream. Literally, Ron, set in samurai Japan. That's King Lear. This is Shakespeare, West Side Story. Romeo and Juliet, they're doing a new one. Spielberg's got a new one coming out with Ansel Elgort. It's Romeo and Juliet, right? So this is happening, you're already watching it. Because Shakespeare works in every context, every time period, across genders, across space and time, and it's amazing. It's amazing entertainment. He makes us laugh, cry, love, understand violence, know our history, and know magic. He makes us feel more deeply than any other storyteller, and one of the ways he does that is he's writing in all these different categories. Right? So it's not just one thing. He's got the tragedies. For for those of you who've read Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet, right? So if you feel like watching something that's going to make you a little weepy, because sometimes you want to weep a little bit, go to the tragedies. We've got the histories, if you want to know what happened. Those plays are based on real events. All the kings, the Henrys, and the Richards, and the Johns. He covers all of them, and all the wars, and it's glorious or not. Comedies, if you feel like giggling. A lot of good comedies out there, Midsummer Night's Dream, As You Like It. It'll make you laugh. Really funny stuff. And then finally, and these are kind of a newer designation, there's a category called the romance plays. These were Shakespeare's late plays. And they are a little bit tragic, a little bit comic, and awesomely they bring in supernatural. So you get sorcerers. And you get Shakespeare at his sort of late in life best, thinking about the larger themes and really putting it all together. So these are all options, right? Anything and everything you want. And finally, in terms of Shakespeare's best entertainment, he reminds us of our messy and glorious humanity. He critiques us at our worst, but also celebrates us at our best. He reveals us to ourselves, and we feel seen and known. And coming back to it, he is the best storyteller of all time, at least writing in the English language. We've got a few images here. Hamlet, Lego Hamlet. To be or not to be, that is the question. What does it mean to be human? Shakespeare wants us to think about that. We're here. Why are we here? Should we stay? Jealousy. Oh, beware, my lord of jealousy. It's the green-eyed monster who doth mock the meat it feeds on. That's where we got the term green-eyed monster. From Othello. We've got Josh Hartnett being sneaky. Love. You know, as humans, we're here to love one another. And Romeo and Juliet. Did my heart love till now? Forswear its sight, for ne'er saw true beauty till this night. All the wonder and awesomeness of meeting that special someone, like your first love. And then, oh, stuff goes sideways. And you also get the heartbreak, right? Leo DiCaprio in Romeo and Juliet, Kiki's nodding. I am fortune's fool. You know? Everybody's dying. It's awful. The love is falling apart. We've got the glory and beauty of the battlefield and also the tragedy with Henry V. That's a great adaptation. And then finally, and I've not seen this one because it scares me too much, a little known play, Titus Andronicus. Tut, I have done 1,000 dreadful things as willingly as one would kill a fly. Listen, bad stuff is happening here, guys. Like they cut out her tongue and they cut off her. That's bad. But if you're in the mood for something kind of horrifying, if you want to scare yourself a little, this play is gnarly. So we've got everything, okay? I love this quote. I just wanted to include it. There was a well-known Shakespearean critic who said, "It's amazing in the Elizabethan audience how much poetry they would stomach on the way to blood and thunder." So he is the greatest poet. He's an amazing writer, but there was a lot of blood and a lot of noise, and that's what the audience wants. You can see this is a recreation of Shakespeare's theater, The Globe, and you can see it was very collaborative. The people literally stand by the stage. They're a part of the story, right? They're right up in the story. And this is actually in London. There's a recreated version of it. I think it was rebuilt in '97 after they closed it because the plays were considered too vulgar. And then it burned down. And then they rebuilt it so you can actually go see Shakespeare performed the way it was meant to be performed at the Globe. It's pretty cool. So I also want to talk about how Shakespeare intersects with liberal arts. And I thought I'd remind everybody of what we're talking about when we talk about liberal arts, because y'all are getting a liberal arts education. That's what you are pursuing here. So I've got a definition by Christopher Eisgruber, who's the president of Princeton, and he says, quote, "A liberal arts education offers an expansive intellectual grounding in all kinds of humanistic inquiry." What does it mean to be human? By exploring issues, ideas, and methods across the humanities and the arts, Shakespeare, and the natural and social sciences, you will learn to read critically, write clearly, and think broadly. These skills will elevate your conversations in the classroom and strengthen your social and cultural analysis. They will cultivate the tools necessary to allow you to navigate the world's most complex issues. A liberal arts education challenges you to consider not only how to solve problems, but also trains you to ask which problems to solve and why, preparing you for positions of leadership and a life of service to the nation and all of humanity. A liberal arts education is a vital foundation for both individual flourishing and the well-being of our society. Okay, that's a long definition. I moved through it quickly. But basically we're saying this is good school, this is great for your education, this is also great professionally in your career, becoming a critical thinker and a problem solver. And it exposes you to all kinds of new ideas. It makes you a part of the conversation. Shakespeare wants you to join the conversation. Okay, Shakespeare is a big part of the liberal arts experience. You can use liberal arts and Shakespeare knowledge in your everyday life. For example, politics. A lot of writers, especially in the kind of political magazines and newspapers and think pieces that we're reading these days, will compare politicians to Shakespearean characters. So liberal arts means learning across boundaries. It means finding out new things in a variety of different subject areas and becoming a polymath, knowing stuff in a lot of different areas, which really means becoming a knowledge wizard. Be a knowledge wizard. So you come to college to make a better life for yourself. That means career is so important, but it also means obtaining knowledge, and knowledge is power. So knowledge of Shakespeare gives you power. You get to join the conversation. People say President Kennedy was like a Prince Hal. Some say Hillary Clinton was like a Lady Macbeth. Some say President Obama was a Hamlet. And some say that President Trump is an Iago. Now, just give some giggles. Whether you agree with these designations or not is predicated on whether or not you have seen or read the stories. You can't join the conversation and agree or disagree unless you know Shakespeare. Okay? And once you know these characters, it's pretty interesting. When I found out about Prince Hal, I was like, oh, Prince Hal, but I'm not going to tell you. You have to go find out for yourself. You can also use the Bard for kind of pop psychology. Analyze your friends and enemies for fun and giggles. If you want to think about your friends or your enemies as Shakespearean characters. Sally in your English class, she's a total Ophelia. Hot mess. So if you've read Romeo and Juliet, no, Hamlet, you know Ophelia, and actually Ophelia, I feel very sorry for Ophelia, but she is a hot mess. Oh my God, stay away from Billy. He's such a Tybalt, total brawler. He's always starting fights. This, by the way, is John Leguizamo from Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, and then the original Romeo and Juliet with Michael York. Look at this guy, right? Then you can say, oh, that guy, like he's such a headstrong, hot-headed brawler. And then you know he's a total Tybalt. It's super fun. Just fun. You just call people fun stuff, and maybe they know, and maybe they don't, but you know. And finally, famous quotes from Shakespeare, you guys. I cannot even tell you how much of our language comes from Shakespeare. This is just Hamlet. These are just some of the quotes that you're going to be familiar with, right? Neither a borrower or a lender be. That's Hamlet. To thine own self be true. Hamlet. Okay? And a couple that I need your help with, because we have the longer version and then we've shortened it in our sort of popular conversations. God hath given you one face, and you make yourself another. What's another way to say that? Two-faced. That's Shakespeare. Though this be madness, yet there is method in it. There's a method to our madness. All of that, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, came from Shakespeare. And I always think, oh, it makes me feel a little sad, you guys. At the end of Hamlet, we say, good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest. And we lost Prince, literally. But whenever we lose someone culturally, we can say, good night, sweet prince, and angels sing you to your rest. And it's gorgeous, right? It's gorgeous. So work Shakespeare into public speaking and casual conversation and sound super smart. Finally, last slide here, and I think I've gone through this pretty quickly. I just got excited. Shakespeare takeaways. What I'd like you to really consider is, you're already experiencing Shakespeare. Go get some more. There's so many amazing movie adaptations. You can go see them on the stage. You can read them too. I don't want to tell you not to, because it's gorgeous, gorgeous language. But get them in your life, because these stories are timeless. And take in the Bard knowledge for work and play. This is good stuff to know. Some of you may be John Green fans. Has anybody read The Fault in Our Stars or seen the film? Guys, that's from Shakespeare. The fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves. As Cassius reminds Brutus and Julius Caesar, our fate is not written in the stars. We make our own fate. You create your own destiny. So make it strong, make it beautiful, and don't forget the Bard. Thank you, guys. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions about Shakespeare that I could attempt to answer? Well, if you do, you can always come by. Oh!
What's the
Professor
argument
Sullivan.
about who Shakespeare was? Was it one guy, multiple guys? I've always heard these theories. What's your best sense?
My sense is that, I feel like when I was taking most of my Shakespeare classes, they landed on, yes, it's one guy. That seemed to be at least what my professors were saying, but certainly that conversation's ongoing, as well as the conversation of, who he's writing to, especially in the sonnets, the dark lady, the young lover. So yeah, there is some question of, was it just Shakespeare working alone, or was that more than one person? And it's never definitively been answered as far as I know. I guess I just want to believe it's one person. Because I think of him as my friend.
It's a better story.
It's a better story too, exactly. Thanks, you guys. Thank you.